Hello and welcome back to this Library of Ruina series. In this video, we'll be taking on the Kurakumo Clan and the musicians of Bremen. These fights give us some great pages, so let's get right into it. The Kurakumo Clan specializes in slash and bleed and have passives that synergize with this strategy. This fight has 2 acts, which isn't something we've had for a while. The first act is 3 Kurakumo Henchmen. These guys don't have much synergy as they only have 1 speed die, so they can't do too many combos. Additionally, they all only have 3 cards to talk about. Let's start with Rules of the Backstreets. This is the second page draw card you get access to and doesn't cost any light. Its singular die is fairly strong and can win clashes against weaker 1 and even 2 cost cards. Of course, you probably want to free hit with this as much as possible, but in a pinch, it can work in your favor. This is slightly less so with Cleanup, the new standard for -1 cost cards. 2-7 with a single bleed is again quite bad for clashing, but it restores your light no matter what, so you can clash with this more easily than you could with Loosen Up. Finally, we have Dark Cloud. This page has a combat start effect, which means that the ability goes into effect during the scene it's used on. You can think of it like an on-use effect, but for statuses instead of resources. Unfortunately for the henchmen, they can't effectively use its ability as they will apply a max of 1 bleed with it until they get a second speed die. Now let's talk about the second act, which is a bit trickier. Each of the enemies has their own playstyle, so let's start with Jin, who is all about protecting himself. He runs some cleanups, but also a bunch of Silent Mist, which rolls somewhat low for a 2 cost, but gives 3 protection next scene. This is best used when you know that the enemy is going to use powerful cards in the next scene. He also runs a couple Scattering Slash, which has better rolls and gives the protection right away. This page is best used when your opponent is about to use their best cards. Of course, the AI doesn't know what you're going to be doing, but protection is annoying to deal with, so I would rather kill Yang first. Yang's specialty card is Sky Clear and Cut, which has a very weak 1 but a very strong 2 that only gets stronger if the first die loses a clash. You want to have a couple cards with the block on 2 to counter this one. Overall, this page feels really annoying to play against, but isn't actually that strong when you get your hands on it. There are quite a few cards like that. Anyway, his other card is Cumulus Wall, a cheap defensive card that rolls fairly well. This card is good if you need a cheap way to get some strong clashes. I'll go into a bit more detail with this when I talk about deck composition, but for now, let's talk about Sayo. Sayo has 2 specialty cards. The first is Sharpened Blade. This is another combat start effect that gives her slash dice 2 power for the scene. This is very potent as, on its own, it rolls 3-5, boosted to 4-6 with her passive, which is a bit low, but if she can cast 2 of them, they'll both be rolling a base 5-7, boosted to 6-8, which is very powerful. But perhaps not as powerful as Inkover. This powerful bond card gets stronger the more cards you have in hand. Even with just 3 cards, its first die will be rolling 4-9, which is fairly easy for Sayo to achieve because her other main passive, Battle Ready, lets her draw 2 extra pages at the start of the act. Having a powerful 1 and 3 will be important for this reception because of this card. Now that we've gone over the fight, let's talk about building a Sayo deck. I found that there are 2 main ways to build Sayo: all-in Inkover or more of a slash value pile. The Inkover all-in deck is obviously built around Inkover, running 3 copies. Since we need to refill our hand to make it as strong as possible, we run 3 copies of Rules of the Backstreets, and to keep our light topped off, 2 Cleanup. The last card is fairly open, but with so many cards with few dice and Inkover being so expensive, we want something that can clash well and is cheap. Enter Cumulus Wall. Realistically, any 1 cost will work, and you can also cut an Inkover for an LE value card, but Cumulus Wall really gets the job done for me. The slash value deck, on the other hand, has a bit more freedom. It generally has a base of 3 Rules of the Backstreets and 2 Cleanup, but the other 4 cards are up to you. 3 of Sharpened Blade and 1 of Inkover gives you consistent clashing with a bomb, but you could also drop a Cleanup or Rules of the Backstreets and run a combination of Sharpened Blade and Dark Cloud. Now that we're done with the Kurakumo Clan, we can move on to the musicians of Bremen. This reception focuses around giving buffs to allies and debuffs to enemies, especially during the first scene because of their passives. Mumu's key card is Heavy Peaks. It suffers from the problem of expensive pages with 1 die, as you're likely to take damage, and you also lose out on a lot of potential emotion coins. It tries to mitigate the first problem by giving 2 enemies feeble on the start of combat, but the second problem is honestly more important. Other than that, he has Shrine to Music, which has somewhat low rolls with a weak 1, somewhat strong 2, and a very weak 3, but compensates with a feeble on an enemy. And the Red Notes, which has terrible rolls but gives a strength to a random ally. This card is decent on a supportive build, but since it can't clash well without the assistance of blunt boosting passives, it can't reach its full potential right now. Oink is the next enemy. He runs the Red Notes, but he also has Tendon Cords. It has bad rolls for its cost, but if it hits, then it gives some good effects. I would still avoid playing with this page, but it'd be wise to try and clash into it to prevent them from getting the full value. Oink's last, and perhaps most impressive card, is Hard Rehearsal. This 3-cost card restores 2 light on use, making it effectively a 1-cost card. Of course, it is a lot harder to use than a 1-cost, but it compensates for it by having a very strong 2 and 3, although with a very weak evade on 1. The last enemy in this reception is Meow. She has the red notes and tenon chords, but she also has 2 more interesting pages. The first is Upbeat Performance. Okay, maybe I lied about them being interesting, as Upbeat Performance is just a vanilla 1-cost, but its rolls are quite powerful, comparable to some of the bad 2-cost cards from earlier videos. If you have a need for some powerful clashes on the cheap, this is one of the best ways to do it right now. The other card that Meow has is Unforgettable Melody. This card has the same average roll as Shrines of Music, although having 3 mediocre rolls rather than 1 good roll and 2 trash ones. But its effect, in my opinion, is much better, being 2 strength to random allies. For the reception itself, similarly to the Full Stop office, the enemies are at their strongest during the first scene. Mumu usually uses heavy peaks, and if you're not careful, the enemies might stagger over your librarians immediately. As long as you spread out your clashes, you should be fine. Now that we've finished up with the reception, I'm going to quickly talk about the deck archetypes that Meow has. The first is a support-based Meow, focused around giving allies strength. This build doesn't have many good clashes, none of the pages being able to clash with the value pages with the same light cost, so if you want to have a simpler deck, this blunt focus deck has more power, but again, without any blunt power boosters, the clashing is still somewhat weak, but it's still a bit stronger on the clashes. In the next video, we'll be finishing up the Urban Plague receptions. It might take some more time than normal because I have a couple of ideas that I want to do to make it special, as well as some league related projects that are going on. In any case, I'll see you soon, and as always, thank you for watching.